Yes, I actually went to 3 different high schools.
Wow. Which were?
Wayne Country Day for freshman and sophomore year. Then my junior year, I lived in Denver, Colorado, so I went to a huge public school there. And then my senior year, I went to Spring Creek High School.
Okay, but so did you go to Spring Creek High School from like K through 8 or K through 8?
No, I went to Spring Creek Elementary from like K through 5, and then middle school through 10th grade at Wayne Country Day.
Wayne Country Day. Okay.
Yeah.
So why the move from Spring Creek to Wayne Country Day?
Well, that's an interesting story that has several parts. I'm just going to give the summed up version. Basic. How deep we trying to go here?
You don't have to. I mean, this
okay.
is
basically
public, so don't share anything you don't want the whole world to possibly know.
I mean,
not that very many people listen to this.
I'm an open book. It really doesn't matter. But essentially, well, first of all, another thing that you get when you live in a small town, and you'll understand this. Did you ever have your mama as your teacher?
It's funny. I never had my mom as my teacher. I did have my mom as my principal.
Ooh, that's a little bit worse, bro. Okay. So me neither, because I switched schools. So let me paint a picture for you. My grandmother, my aunt, and my mother, I would have had all of them as my teacher, and I continued to be at Spring Creek. And I was just like, no. And so my mom let me switch. That's about 5% of the story, but that's basically it.
So the story we're going with is you didn't want to have to endure all the family torture.
I mean, like, I see them at home. I don't want to see them at home and at school. Like, come on.
You didn't want to get spanked in front of your kids.
And classmates. Yeah, and my mama and my grandmama would have had no trouble like punishing me in front of, I just didn't need all that energy in my life.
Probably would have made an example of you.
Oh, 100% would have made an example out of me. It would have been.
Wait until we get home.
Like, yeah, right. Yeah.
And when you get home, wait till we get back to school tomorrow. I'm right. Show everybody I'm gonna scare those kids.
Exactly.
Honestly, that's not a bad thing. Now that I'm thinking about it, every teacher should have their child as a student and kind of have it as a scared straight thing, to where they just beat them senseless in class. And there's obviously you can't hit kids anymore because the soft world we live in. You can't hit students anymore, but you could hit your own kid. And I would think if I saw a kid, get spanked in class, I would shut up.
But see, then other kids will be afraid to be friends with you because, and like, I just, you just don't need that. First of all, middle school is already like a jungle. You don't need like all that extra ish. So
friends be like, "Oh, you get away with everything because your mom's the teacher."
Right, but that's only though that in theory that would work only if like you had one of those parents that thought you were the apple of their eye. Now, I ain't saying nothing bad about my mama, but my mama and grandmama would have made, like he said, they would have made an example out of me and been harder on me than all the other students. And I just gave myself the gift of foregoing that experience. So,
which I think is better than having the parent, like, I don't know how would you describe it? Having the hover parent or whatever as a teacher, having the like my baby a special parent,
right?
Teacher,
right.
But yeah, so public and private school. What would you say is the biggest difference?
Number of people. So, like, for example, in my class, no. Let me be clear here. My entire grade at private school was less than 20 people. The entire 9th grade class that moved, So, and then that graduating class of that school, it was like, at most, it was like 28 people total in that entire grade, not just class. So, and then like, for example, in the school that I went to in Colorado, there was 1,500 people in my grade. So going from like less than 20 to 1500 was quite the culture shock. But also you can it's kind of the same parallel of like the small town to the big city thing. Like you can kind of get lost in it. And I mean, I loved that year. That I mean, because coming back to Spring Creek after that was not like a culture shock because it's a heck of a lot smaller than that, obviously. But that public school was so like I mean I loved that year. It was cool how like I literally would meet new people every day, which is the whole time, which is strange, you know.
You know, I've talked to people that went to private school, and some of them, you know, ended up leaving and, you know, finishing out at public school. And they taught like it's such a weird concept to me that, you know, a lot of these kids start from kindergarten all the way through graduation. No, it's the same core group.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just like 15 of you, you know,
super tight though.
which is like it can't. There are positives to that, but it's just like
Yeah.
I guess it's just not real, you know, because
Yeah.
that's another thing when I talk to people like, you know, that did both, you know, they're like, well, it's just like, it was awesome and it was wonderful. And obviously, you know, the education is probably a little bit better, but it's just not real. And you're not really prepared for the real world. Is that a fair?
Yeah, there's kind of drawbacks to both, and there's advantages to both, just like anything. But I felt like I got a pretty well-rounded high school education, given the fact that I went to 3 different high school experiences. So yeah, it was a trip.
What were the shoot, I'm at a loss for words. What's the word I'm looking for? What were the demographics at Wayne Country Day? It was all
uh,
white, completely white.
no. So like in my class, for example, we had 2 black kids and the rest of them were white. Yeah. And then we had, and so, yeah, I mean, is that what you're asking?
Well, I've the same thing. I've talked to people who, you know, who said um they went from like kindergarten to like 8th grade, and they were like, I didn't see a black kid, and I was like,
I mean, yeah, you do hear of like public, like private schools in certain areas where that is the case. And that is kind of crazy. Like that is kind of really weird. Like
that's my thing. Is like it's not real. You know what I
that's
mean?
not real. Yeah, it's weird.
Um, well, let me ask you this: what are because you know, your brother went to Wayne Country Day, obviously, and he and I are tight. We're buddies. And he was very adamant about. He stressed to me that he wholeheartedly felt like he got a higher quality education, obviously, but that he was much more prepared for college than other, you know, regular kids his age.
Yeah, and that also depends on the area that you're in. You know what I mean? Like, for example, like it depends on how good the public school system is where you are. So, for example, the public school that I went to in Colorado was in the Cherry Creek School District, which is like one of the top school districts in the country. And I literally felt like that year there was absolutely no drop in the level of education I was getting from coming from Wayne Country Day to there. Now, when I went back to Spring Creek, that's a different story. But like it just depends on what's, you know, where you are. And it depends on like how well the school district or the state is equipping and paying teachers, it and how well the teachers are supported, and that it affects like how, you know. So in general, in my opinion, just based off the experience that I've had, I would say that private school better prepares you for college. But I have, like I said, I went to a public school my junior year that was the exact same caliber, and it was truly like a testament to like, now this is the school system. And the teachers were paid well, and they were, you know, it was well funded and like all of that. So I just think it depends on the area.
What's the greatest tool you gain by from a private education?
You know, I am gonna reflect on that later and actually like, think about that, because I've never been asked that before. I mean, practically, I guess when I went into college, I didn't feel like the workload, it didn't shock me or anything. Whereas I remember having like my roommate in college, my freshman year, I remember her being like super stressed out about it, and like I wasn't, not like, not I'm not saying like I was smarter than her. I'm just saying that like I'm not saying like the material. I'm talking about like just the amount of like stuff you had to get done.
You did the learning curve wasn't necessarily there.
Yeah. So I mean, that was obviously like, that was a practical thing, but also just I guess off the top of my head, I've literally never really thought too much about this, but um you learn, you get an education in politics going to a private school. Um Kind of like secondhand smoke. Like, you get a secondhand education on like politics, because it's not, it's not a democracy. Private school, it is a dictatorship. And it's
Go ahead, Spence, quote it. This is not a democracy. This is a dictatorship.
This is a dictatorship.
I am the law.
Yeah, so it's run by whoever like the families who have the most money and the most influence are, and who's who and whatever. And so it really is more of a thing. So yeah, I'll just say that you definitely get an education in politics and political warfare, shall we say.
And so, and obviously, there are, I guess, negatives to that. But as you're saying that, I'm sitting here thinking, you're also, in this little tight knit group, obviously for a long period of time, most of you. But you're also around people that are, their parents are wealthy and successful, and so it's competitive, right? So
Yeah.
you learn at an early age to be competitive, which I think is a good thing. And you're competing against people, if their parents are these, powerful people in the community, and they're smart and well spoken or whatever, like, you're getting an education on how to be that, and how, and you can aspire to do things that quote unquote normal kids don't. You know what I mean? Is that fair?
Yeah. Like I said, you get exposed to certain levels of sophistication, and like I said, mostly politics.
Right.